They buried her alive in the mountain, or at least, that's what everyone believed. When the storm finally ended, and the snow settled, someone saw it first. A thin, lazy wisp of smoke, rising, not from a chimney, but from solid rock. 3 months earlier, Ingrid Halvorsen stood in a room full of people, and realized she no longer belonged to any of them. The map was already drawn, lines carved in ink, decisions made before she had even walked in. Jonas Creed stood at the front, broad shoulders, steady voice, a man used to being right. "The new sawmill goes here," he said, tapping the map once. Her land. No hesitation, no discussion. Progress didn't wait, and it didn't ask permission. They offered her money, not enough to rebuild, not enough to move, just enough to make it look fair. Ingrid didn't argue. She looked around the room instead. Faces she knew. People who had shared meals with her, borrowed tools from her husband, spoken kindly when Anders was alive. Now, they wouldn't meet her eyes. Because this was easier. A widow was not a builder. Not a provider. Not part of the future they were planning. She was something else. A problem, being removed. The cabin stood unfinished when she returned. Half a roof, walls that didn't meet cleanly. Gaps wide enough for wind to pass through without slowing down. Anders had meant to finish it before winter. But winter had taken him first. A quarry blast gone wrong. One mistake, and the stone he worked with every day, closed over him. No body recovered. Just absence, and a journal. Ingrid sat inside the half-built cabin that night, the wind already slipping through the open seams, and opened it. The pages were dense, tight handwriting, precise sketches, angles, measurements. Things she didn't fully understand yet, but could feel were important. Anders hadn't built homes the way other men did. He didn't think in walls. He thought in mass. In weight. In how the earth held temperature, and refused to let it go. One phrase appeared again and again, underlined, circled, pressed deeper into the page with each repetition. Jordvarma. Earth heat. She turned another page, then another, until she found the drawings. A cliff face. Marked carefully. Measured. Annotated in detail no one else in this town would understand. And at the base, hidden behind rough lines of brush and thorns, a narrow opening. Drage Hullet. The dragon's hole. The memory came back to her slowly. Anders standing there, one hand resting against the sun-warmed stone, eyes fixed on something she hadn't seen. "This isn't just rock," he had said. "It's a battery." She hadn't understood then. Now, she did. The next morning, she packed what she could carry. A lantern, a shovel, the journal, and walked west, toward the bluff no one else cared about. The hawthorn was worse than she remembered. Thick, twisted. A natural barrier built from thorns and time. It tore at her sleeves, cut into her hands. Refused to give way easily. But she didn't stop. By midday, blood marked her skin. And the entrance finally showed itself. Narrow, dark, almost not there at all. Cold air slipped from it. Not sharp like the wind, but deep, still, waiting. Ingrid lit the lantern, and stepped inside. The passage was tight at first, stone pressing close on both sides, forcing her to turn slightly just to move forward. Then suddenly, it opened. A chamber. Small, unfinished, but real. The air didn't move, didn't bite. It simply held. She stepped further in, raising the lantern higher. Stone walls. Solid. Unbroken. A ceiling that didn't creak, didn't shift, didn't fight the wind above. And beneath her feet, packed earth that didn't feel frozen. Not warm, but not cold either. Something in between. Something steady. Ingrid stood there for a long moment, breathing slowly, listening. Above her, the world was exposed. Wind, cold. Weak walls that wouldn't survive what was coming. Down here,
There was none of it. No wind. No sound. Just the quiet weight of the mountain. She opened the journal again, turning to the marked pages, the diagrams, the notes she had only begun to understand. Fire, but not for air. Heat, but not to lose. Paths beneath the ground. Stone holding what flame could not. Ingrid closed the book slowly. Above her, the town was already building for winter. Cutting wood, stacking it higher. Preparing to fight something they had never truly beaten. She looked around the chamber. At the stone. At the earth. At the space Anders had seen long before she had. Not a house. A shelter inside the mountain itself. They can have the land, she said. More to the silence than to anyone else. A breath. I'll take what's under it. The lantern flickered slightly, casting long shadows against the rock. And for the first time since Anders died, Ingrid did not feel like she was losing something. She felt like she had found it. Ingrid returned to the bluff before sunrise. Every day after that, not with hesitation, but with purpose. The first strikes of the hammer echoed strangely inside the stone. Sharp, hollow, then absorbed, as if the mountain itself refused to give the sound back. She started small, expanding the entrance just enough to move without turning sideways, clearing loose scree from the floor, hauling it out one bucket at a time. It was slow work, heavy. Every piece of stone had to be persuaded, not forced. Anders had written that clearly. Stone does not yield to strength. It yields to patience. By midday, dust coated her hands, her arms, her face. By evening, her shoulders burned, her fingers trembled. But the chamber was larger. Not by much, but enough to matter. By the fourth day, someone followed her. 2 boys from town, curious at first, then laughing. They watched from the edge of the hawthorn, whispering to each other, until one of them called out, "Find anything down there?" Ingrid didn't answer. The second boy smirked. "Careful," he said. "You keep digging like that, you won't come back out." They laughed. The sound didn't carry far. The mountain swallowed it, the same way it swallowed everything else. By the end of the week, the whispers had spread. At the store, at the well, the widow on the bluff, digging herself into the ground. Some said it softly. Others didn't bother. "She's burying herself early." The name came next. Spoken once, then repeated, until it stuck. The buried woman. Jonas Creed heard it last. Not because no one told him, but because he chose when to listen. He walked out to the bluff 3 days later. Not in a hurry. A man like him never rushed to correct a mistake. He arrived mid-afternoon, boots steady against the rock, hands resting easily at his sides. Ingrid saw him before he spoke. She set her hammer down, wiped the dust from her hands, and waited. "This needs to stop," he said. No greeting, no question, just a decision, spoken out loud. Ingrid tilted her head slightly. "Why?" Jonas glanced past her, into the dark opening of the cave. "You're destabilizing the face," he said. "You keep pulling rock out like this. You don't know what's holding above it." A pause. "It collapses. You won't even hear it coming." Ingrid followed his gaze, looking at the stone as if seeing it for the first time. But there was no fear in her expression. Only calculation. "I'm not cutting randomly," she said. She reached down, picked up the journal, opened it halfway, then closed it again. "I know where the weight sits." Jonas frowned. "That book won't hold the mountain up." "No," she said. "It explains it." Silence settled between them. The wind moved lightly across the ridge above, a faint sound compared to the stillness inside the stone. You don't have time for this, Jonas said finally. First snow will come early this year. He stepped closer, voice lowering slightly. You need walls, a roof, a fire that stays lit. Ingrid looked past him, toward the town in the distance. Thin lines of smoke already rising, disappearing into the open sky. Gone as quickly as they formed. That fire doesn't stay, she said. Jonas didn't respond. It leaves, she continued. Through the chimney, through the walls, through every gap you can't seal. She turned back toward the cave. I'm not building something to lose heat from. Jonas let out a breath, slow, controlled. You're not building anything, he said. A beat. You're digging a hole. Ingrid met his gaze. No. A pause. I'm entering something that's already built. That answer lingered, longer than it should have. Jonas shifted slightly, as if the ground beneath him had changed without warning. But only for a moment. Then it was gone. This is foolishness, he said. You think the cold won't find you in there. He gestured toward the entrance. It will sit in that stone, wait for you to stop moving, and then take everything. Ingrid didn't raise her voice. Didn't argue. The cold doesn't live in the stone, she said. A breath. It passes through it. Jonas stared at her. That answer made less sense than the last. You're going to die out here, he said flatly. Ingrid picked up her hammer again. Turned back toward the cave. Not out here, she said. A single strike rang out, sharp against the rock. In there. Jonas stood for a moment longer, watching her work. The rhythm had already returned. Strike. Pause. Adjust. Not wild. Measured. Intentional. Then he turned and left. By the time the sun dropped behind the ridge, the story had already changed. Not curiosity anymore. Certainty. The widow wasn't building. She was burying herself. Inside the mountain, Ingrid carved a second chamber. Small. Just enough for sleeping. Then another space, narrow, carefully cut, following the lines Anders had drawn. Not a room. A path. A channel. Something that would not make sense, until it was finished. Her hands bled again. But she didn't stop. Because above her, winter was already moving. And this time, she wasn't going to wait for it. By the time the first frost touched the ridge, the mountain had begun to change. Not outside, inside. The chamber Ingrid had carved was no longer raw stone and shadow. It had shape now, purpose. The floor had been leveled, packed tight, then covered with broad flat slabs she had pried loose from deeper seams. Beneath them, hidden from sight, the channel ran, narrow at first, then turning, then doubling back, again, and again, a path with no reason, unless you knew what it was for. The firebox came last, small, deliberate, built tight into the back wall where the rock was strongest, stone fitted carefully, sealed with clay she had carried up from the creek bed. No gaps, no mistakes, because there was no room for them. If the system failed, there would be no second attempt. The first fire felt wrong, too small, too fast. The flame caught quickly, bright, clean, then pushed inward, drawn away from the chamber, not into the air, into the floor. Ingrid stepped back, watching. The fire burned hard for less than an hour, then collapsed into coals, then ash. And the chamber stayed cold. Silence stretched. Doubt followed. Had she misunderstood the drawings? Misread the scale? Was Jonas right? Was this nothing more than a hole in the ground waiting to freeze? She knelt slowly, placing her hand against the stone floor. Cold. She didn't move it. Time passed, unmarked, unmeasured. Then, something changed. Not warmth, not yet, but the absence of cold. Subtle, almost nothing, but real.
Her fingers pressed harder, as if trying to hold on to it. Another minute, then another, and there it was. A faint heat, rising from beneath the stone, not from above. Not from flame, from the ground itself. Ingrid closed her eyes briefly. Not relief. Recognition. By nightfall, the entire floor held it. Even. Steady. No flicker. No draft. Just a quiet warmth, that didn't demand anything more. She moved in the next day. Not slowly. Not cautiously. Completely. The few things she owned, tools, blankets, the journal, all carried into the chamber. The cabin above was left as it was. Unfinished. Exposed. Already losing the fight it hadn't been built to win. Life inside the mountain settled quickly. Morning began with fire. Small. Fast. Gone before the sun reached the ridge. But the heat stayed. Held in the stone, in the walls, in the ground itself. The air didn't move. Didn't steal warmth from her skin. Didn't whisper through cracks. It simply remained. Above her, the town entered winter. Wood piles stacked higher. Axes moving faster. Smoke rising from every chimney, thick, constant, wasted.
Inside those cabins, fires roared. And still, the coal found its way in. Under doors, through seams, between logs that had shifted just enough to fail. People moved closer to their hearths, faces burning, backs freezing. Feeding the fire, again, and again, and again. Ingrid lit one fire. And waited. Days passed. The temperature dropped, slowly at first, then sharply. The kind of cold that settled into the ground, into the bones of the land itself. But not into the mountain. Inside, the chamber held steady. Not warm like summer, but alive. A constant, that didn't collapse when the fire ended. By the second week, people began to notice something. There was no smoke from the bluff. Not in the morning, not at dusk. Nothing. At the store, someone said it first. She's out of wood. Another nodded. Or already gone. Jonas Creed heard it, and said nothing. But that night, standing beside his own fire, feeding it again, watching the flames climb and vanish into the chimney, he found himself thinking about the stone. About the cave. About the way she had said it. I'm entering something that's already built. He looked at the walls of his house. Solid. Well cut. And still, the cold pressed through them. He turned back to the fire, added another log. Watched it burn. Watched it disappear. Above ground, winter was tightening. Inside the mountain, Ingrid placed her hand against the floor, feeling the steady warmth beneath her palm. It was working. The storm didn't come the way they expected. It came with warmth first. A strange wind rolled down from the mountains, soft, wet, melting everything it touched. Snow turned to water. Ice loosened its grip. For 2 days, Iron Ridge breathed again. Men stepped outside without gloves. Water dripped from rooftops. It felt like a mistake. The old ones knew it, they always did. Too early, one of them said. No one listened. On the third day, the sky changed. Not slowly, all at once. The light drained from it, replaced by something heavy, something bruised. Then the temperature dropped. Fast. So fast it didn't feel real. Water froze where it stood, mud turned to iron beneath their feet. And the wind came back. Not as a warning, as a force. It slammed into the town, dragging ice and snow sideways across the land, erasing distance, erasing direction, erasing everything. The blizzard had arrived. Inside the cabins, fires roared. Wood burned faster than it should, faster than it could be replaced. Heat rushed upward, vanishing through chimneys, pulling cold air in behind it. A cycle no one could stop. Families closed off rooms, hung blankets over doors, pressed together around their hearths. Still, the cold came in. It found the cracks, the seams, the places no one thought to seal. It always did. In Jonas Creed's house,
the fire burned harder than any he had ever set. Log after log fed into the flames until the iron groaned. Still, his breath showed in the air. Across the room, frost crept along the inside of the walls. His daughter lay wrapped in blankets, her breathing shallow, uneven. Too fast. Too thin. Jonas stood beside the fire, one hand braced against the stone, watching it burn. Watching it fail. Outside, the storm deepened. Snow piled against doors. Against windows. Against anything that tried to stand above it. The bluff disappeared completely. No shape. No outline. Just a white wall where it had been. And beneath it, buried without a trace, the entrance to the cave. Inside the mountain, nothing moved. No wind. No sound. Only the distant pressure of the storm, muted by layers of stone. Ingrid fed the fire once. Small. Controlled. The flame burned bright, then vanished into the system beneath her feet. The heat followed. Spreading slowly, through the stone, through the ground, held. The chambers settled into warmth. Not rising. Not falling. Remaining. She sat at the table, mending a sleeve by lantern light. The air was still. No drafts. No shifting cold. Just a quiet, constant presence. Time passed differently here. Hours without tension, without counting.
Could have lasted a day, or a week. It didn't matter. On the fourth day, Jonas stopped feeding the fire. Not by choice. Because there was nothing left to burn. The last of the wood had gone that morning. Furniture followed. A chair. A crate. Gone just as quickly. Now, there was nothing. The house cooled fast. Faster than he thought possible. Heat vanished. Cold rushed in. His daughter's breathing worsened. Each breath shallower than the last. Jonas stood in the center of the room. Hands empty. Mind empty. Everything he knew. Everything he had built. Had led to this. Failure. Then a thought returned. Unwanted. Unreasonable. The woman in the mountain. Ingrid Halvorsen. The one they had buried with their words. Before the snow ever did. He closed his eyes for a moment. Then opened them again. There was nothing else left. He wrapped himself in every layer he owned. Opened the door. And stepped into the storm. The cold hit instantly. Breath stolen. Vision lost in white. He pushed forward anyway. Step. Pause. Breathe. Again. The snow reached his waist. Then higher. The wind dragged at him. Pulled him sideways. Forced him down. He got back up. Again. And again. The bluff was gone. No outline. No marker. Just snow. Endless. He dropped to his knees. Began to dig. Bare hands. No tool. Clawing through packed ice. Searching for something that might not exist anymore. Minutes passed. Or longer. His fingers went numb. Then, they broke through. Empty space. Air. Jonas froze. Then dug faster. Widening the open. Ingrid didn't answer right away. She watched him, taking in the way his shoulders had collapsed. The way his hands trembled against the stone. The way certainty had left him completely. Then she stood. Not in triumph. Not in urgency. Calm. She crossed the room, lifted a small pot from the iron grate, and poured something warm into a cup. Steam rose slowly, soft, steady. She placed it in his hands. "Drink," she said. Jonas hesitated for a moment, then obeyed. The warmth hit him instantly. Not just in his throat, but deeper. Something returning, after being gone too long. "The stone holds it," Ingrid said. Jonas looked up. "The fire is quick," she continued, "but the heat doesn't have to be." She walked to the center of the chamber, knelt slightly, and pressed her hand flat against the floor. "It stays," she said. A pause. "If you give it somewhere to stay." Jonas said nothing. Because there was nothing left to argue with. "My daughter," he said finally, voice thinner now, fragile. "She won't last the night." The words didn't need more.
Ingrid nodded once. Practical. Then you don't need a fire, she said. He frowned slightly, confused. You need heat that lasts, she added. She moved quickly now, gathering several flat stones from near the firebox. They were hot to the touch. Not burning, but alive with stored warmth. She wrapped them in thick cloth, layer after layer, sealing the heat inside. Take these, she said. Jonas reached out, hesitated only a second, then took them. They'll stay warm for hours, Ingrid said. A pause. Put them under the blankets, close to her. He nodded, gripping them tighter than necessary. Seal your house, she continued. Every crack. Every seam. Her eyes met his. Your fire is pulling the cold inside. The idea landed slowly. Then all at once. Jonas looked around the chamber again. The still air. The quiet. The warmth that didn't move. Not a battle. A system. He stood slowly. Different now. Not broken. Changed. At the entrance, he paused, looked back at her. Why? He asked. A simple word. But it carried everything. Everything he had said before, everything the town had done. Ingrid didn't hesitate. The mountain doesn't care about us, she said. A breath. And neither does the cold. She stepped closer, just enough for her voice to reach him clearly. We survive together, a pause, or we don't survive at all. Jonas held her gaze for a moment longer, then nodded once. And turned, disappearing back into the narrow tunnel. The storm broke the next day. Not gently. It simply stopped.
Cleared, revealing a world buried under layers of white. The bluff returned, slowly, as the wind settled. In Iron Ridge, the cost became visible. Collapsed roofs, frozen livestock, homes abandoned in the night. Smoke no longer rose from every chimney, only a few remained. Jonas Creed's house was one of them. Barely. Inside, the stones still held their warmth. His daughter slept. Not cured, but alive. And that was enough. He returned to the bluff 2 days later. Not as a builder. As a man with questions. Ingrid didn't turn him away. She didn't keep the knowledge to herself. She showed him everything. The firebox, the channels beneath the floor, the way the stone carried heat instead of losing it. He listened. Truly listened. That spring, the sound of building in Iron Ridge changed. Less wood, more stone, foundations dug deeper, walls thickened where the wind struck hardest. Fires burned shorter, but mattered more. Some rebuilt their homes. Others did something bolder. They went to the bluff. And began to dig. The name changed too. No one called it folly anymore. They called it shelter. Years later, on a winter night just as cold as the one that nearly ended them, a man stood barefoot in his home, and placed his hand against the floor. Warm. Not from fire. From memory. Outside, the wind still moved across the ridge. The cold still came every year. That never changed. But inside the homes of Iron Ridge, something had. They no longer fought the winter. They endured it, quietly, intelligently, together. And deep inside the mountain, Ingrid Halvorsen sat in the same chamber she had carved from stone, the same steady warmth rising beneath her feet, not surviving the cold, but living beyond it.